Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. Joining me today, co-host Mel Stewart. He's such a delight on the camera. And joining us today, part 2 of James Magnussen. We diddled around the whole time last time. We barely got to your career. This time we're going to keep it serious, except for these first 5 minutes. James, you posted some sick lifting videos on your Instagram at James Magnussen. Tell us about your bench, squat, and deadlift adventures.
Yeah, so I did this TV show in Australia called SAS Australia. But basically, we did the selection course for the Special Forces Army in Britain. And I got right to the end of that course and completed the show. But I lost 11 kilos in 2 weeks and was like battered and sore and sorry. So I sat down with one of my mates who's a strength and conditioning coach. And I was like, let's build myself back up. Let's get back in shape. And so for the past probably 12 weeks, I've been working really hard at doing some big lifting, mostly some of those powerlifting staples. And this last couple of weeks, I've been hitting my straps. So I thought I'd post a bit up and show everyone where I'm at.
I'm talking now. I'm talking so that I can take over the camera. Why are you still on camera, Coleman? Am I?
You're on camera, Mel.
Oh my God. It's not me. This is a jacked Maggie. So just out of curiosity, what was your race weight?
My race weight was between 92 and 94 kilos.
It means nothing to me in the United States.
Yeah, I think about 210 pounds.
Gotcha. So a little bit jacked.
Yeah.
And what are you at right now?
About 245 pounds.
That's pretty. That's a little. It's what I would call a little bit buff. So let's just here's the thing. Before we get into the swimming, let's just say this: habitualequipment.com. You got into a little bit of it because we were just asking out of curiosity. Is this, you said this really ramped up during COVID. Are you a co-founder of this company?
Yeah, I'm a co-founder. So there's 3 of us in the company. We all kind of met through the gym, and so similar values. We've all got different skill sets, and so it works really well.
And it's so since you are a co-founder of habitualequipment.com, do you have to be jacked, or do you have to keep it buff?
Yeah, the other two co-founders aren't jacked or buffed, so they stay on the other side of the lens. So it's my job to be buff.
You're like the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer.
Yeah.
All right. So we had to go habitualequipment.com. If you guys haven't been there, check it out. If you're not going to James's Instagram account, it's james.magnussen. On IG, james.magnussen. You need to follow him. Good stuff. Last time we talked to you, you were at 2011 World Championships.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Colin. What?
Well, before we get into swimming again, you talked about this reality TV show, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about being on this. You lost 11 kilos, which is crazy. You went through this crazy fitness course. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah. So basically, it's the induction course or the Hell Week that they do for the Special Forces in Britain. I think they do it in the Marines also over there in America. They do that Hell Week process to kind of weed out all the weak people. So in Australia, it was called the SAS Australia. It was for celebrities. So they started off with 17 of us at the start. And the only way you get out of the show is if you quit or you surrender. So 17 of us started off. The first thing we did was drop backwards out of helicopters. We did stuff with guns. The last part of the show on the 14th day was torture. So for 18 hours, we got tortured. It was just like this crazy experience. Yeah.
I thought you meant figuratively, as in like, oh, it
No,
was really
literally.
hard.
Yeah, no, literally torture.
What do you like? How did you get tortured?
So they put us. So we did this evade and escape mission, and we inevitably got caught, which was kind of the idea of it. They roughed us up a bit, threw us around, dragged us through like paddocks and stuff with German shepherds barking in our faces and all this weird stuff. Then they handcuffed us, blindfolded us, and put noise cancelling headphones on with the sounds of screaming babies, squealing pigs, explosions, scratching on chalkboards. And they left us in these stress positions for 8 hours out in the cold. So it was -4 degrees Celsius, and they left us there for 8 hours. And a few people sort of broke and started crying and quit the show. And a couple of us survived it and made it to the end.
You didn't break and start crying, buddy?
Nah, it didn't break. They almost got me. Towards the end, I just started to flinch a little bit at some of the sounds. I was like, man, I don't have much left in me here.
I'm thinking Coleman would break way before I would. I just want to go on the record.
I'm going to agree with you. It doesn't sound like I could do that.
This sounds terrible. Why would you do this? It sounds awful.
So they came to me with the idea of the show, and they showed me a few clips of it from the British version. And I called back my agent, and I said, no way, that's insane. I'm not doing it. And then I sat back and I started thinking like, oh, I wonder if I could survive that. I wonder if I could jump out of helicopters. I wonder if I could shoot guns. And as soon as that competitive part of me kicked in, I was like, damn, I've got to know. And so I signed up and started training for it.
Man.
All right. Can we talk about swimming now, or we want to
please
stay on the show?
No, swimming. Go for it.
No, okay. We just one more question. What was the most painful? What was the worst thing on the show? Like what? Because you think things are going to suck. You think things are going to make you break, but it's usually something odd. It's something weird where you have a weak spot. What was your weak spot on this show?
Yeah. So my weak spot was the cold. So like I said, it was -degrees each day. We're down near what we call the Snowy Mountains in Australia, Mount Kosciuszko, if anyone's good with geography. So it was snowing, it was cold, and the whole 2 weeks through the show, we had no showers, no beds, no like hot food. So the whole time you never got warm. And at one point, a couple of us started getting hypothermia. And they basically said, well, you can go to hospital, but you quit the show and you're off, or you can kind of suck it up and keep going. So that was the thing. Like the day that I nearly got hypothermia, I was like, this is the only thing that's going to break me is this cold weather. And it's something that we're not really adapted to here in Australia. Like in Sydney, it never gets that cold. So it was a real shock for me. And the one thing, each night going to bed shivering, it ate away at me slowly throughout the 2 weeks.
What makes, here's the thing, you never think about this, but it's like, it's swimmers. A lot of people want to be rock hard. They want to look like they're carved out of stone. The truth is, it makes you a little bit weak. You need to be a little bit of a bread truck if you want to truly be tough, because the elements will crush you. Yeah,
that's right. And the leaner you are, the colder you get, and faster. So that was tough.
We're talking about swimming now. Let's talk about swimming. We're going to take you. Here's the thing. Your stories are so great. You left us off in 2011. 2011 blew up. You have this thing where you become famous, which is something we don't understand in the United States quite so much. But it's your life really turned around. Huge breakout moment. And did we get past your individual 100 free? Do we need to move to the next chapter? Because it gets interesting after that.
Yeah, I think we got to about the relay swim, which was my 47.4. Then going into that final, I think I spoke about, they showed that live back in Australia, the only race they showed live, the whole meet. And then when I got back off that plane, I realized things had sort of changed, because there was media everywhere. There was journalists, there was cameras, there was TV crews. Everything got very crazy from that moment onwards.
Did you have a girlfriend and you broke up with her and leveled up? Did you do any of that stuff? Did it get weird? Did you get weird
Pretty
up
much,
here?
Yeah.
Did it get weird?
I wouldn't say I leveled up or anything like that, but yeah, things got pretty crazy. Yeah, yeah, it was cool.
You weren't ready for that question, were you? Hey man, we're just talking here. We're just talking. You could just say, I don't want to answer your question. You're an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm not answering that.
Hold on. So yes, I mean things get huge, things blow up for you. I mean, take us through that journey, because that like Mel said, like I'm sure it gets kind of weird. You said it gets kind of cool, but I mean take us to that like post 2011, pre 2012.
Yeah, so leading into the 2012 Olympics, it just kind of out of coincidence, as an Australian swim team, as an Australian Olympic team as a whole, we didn't have a lot of gold medal hopes. We're going through a bit of a transition period. And so a lot of that focus fell on myself personally, for our gold medal hopes. So I think leading into the London Olympics, I had about between 10 and 12 personal sponsors that I was an ambassador for. Banks, cars, Subway, shopping centers, like you name it, I was sponsored by them. And for every sponsor, I was doing TV advertisements, I was doing photo shoots, I was doing public speaking, I was meeting with boards of directors. It was huge billboards of me on skyscrapers in the city in Sydney. I've got some really cool pictures where you can kind of look out from a bar and there's a huge building in the city, and I'm plastered over the whole thing in my Speedos. So you can imagine like going to that bar and meeting girls was hard work. But yeah, things
got
really
anymore.
wild. And I think I spoke about in the last podcast. For me, I came from a country town, very humble beginnings. Didn't know a lot of people. wasn't well known in public, and so for me, it was a very big change and something that I probably struggled with a little bit. I used to love swimming. I loved racing, but I loved the moment I walked out of the pool, just shutting that part of my day, my life off, and not talking about swimming and thinking about swimming until I got back to the pool again. And that was one of my biggest strengths in my early career, was that I could shut this persona on and off around racing, around bravado, and that kind of thing. But when this changed after 2011, I couldn't get any respite from the swimming world anymore. Every time I walked out my front door, people would be stopping me in the street for photos, telling me about their kids who, play in the local football league or something like this, asking for autographs. So it got really stressful for me, and I found that was the hardest thing I found about the preparation for the London Olympics, was I couldn't switch off from swimming. And it started to affect my recovery. It started to affect my sleep. And it just made the whole process something very different to what it was leading into the 2011 World Championships. And I thought after 2011, I got this thing down pat. I won the World Champs. I know the process. And then the whole ball game got changed on me, and it became almost like a different sport.
You have a lot of wisdom looking back on this, but just out of curiosity, did you feel you were in promotion mode and you're promoting an entire sport and the Olympic movement in your home country, which is it's a lot of responsibility. There is a lot of financial gain. Were you pressured by Swimming Australia or the Australian Olympic organizing committee, or were you driven because were you middle class and like this was the time to cash in? What were the pressures? Like, can you just kind of bottom line it?
Yeah, I think firstly, like I said, I came from very humble beginnings, and I'd never been exposed to money like that before. And I just turned 20 years of age. So like, how do you turn down some of that stuff? I think Swimming Australia, it's not that they pressured me into anything. I think they shared my confidence in my abilities. So they were like, this is our guy. We probably hadn't had a huge name in the sport since probably Ian Thorpe and Grant Hackett at the back end of their careers. So, I mean, Grant Hackett finished in 2008. so we'd had Eamon Sullivan there. He was a pretty big name, I guess. We'd had sort of Steph Rice in 2008, but we probably hadn't had that poster boy or poster girl. And so I think Swimming Australia kind of jumped on that bandwagon. And, you know, when you went to the state champs or the national champs, it was my face everywhere. You know, everyone, I was being put up for all the media opportunities. All the journalists would come to talk to me and stuff like that, which I didn't mind at the time. I didn't know any different. And I didn't know that would eventually affect my performance. I just thought I was doing the right thing by everybody around me. And I probably started thinking too much about the whole process and not enough about just getting back to the swimming and the performance.
So take us to trials in 2012. You drop that legendary 47.10, which was at the time fastest textile swim ever. It's still, I'm pretty sure it's still like top 5. Has to be at least top 10. I mean, it's, you know, it's an insane time. Where were you at that meet? Because, you know, again, from the outside looking in, it seems like your star is still just rising.
Yeah, so I was swimming really well in training. I hadn't had a big race since the World Championships the year before. So you think the World Champs were probably in August-ish, and then our trials were in about March. So I haven't had a big race in 6 to 9 months. I've been training really well, building towards this trials. Our trials are a long way out from the Olympic Games. So I want to peak at those trials, and I want to kind of show everyone, you know, what hard work I've been doing in that sort of period where no one's heard from me. So the thought process going into that trials was, right, I've swum at the World Champs and I've turned in 6th or something and managed to win the race. What does it look like if I turn first? And what does it look like if I just use a little bit more speed in that first 50 meters? So that's what we did. I went out faster than I'd ever gone out before. I think it was 22.6 seconds. And I got a bunch of clear water, and I did a time that even I was surprised by at the time, really. I was looking towards the Olympics to have a crack at that world record, but I was surprised by that 47.1. And the funny thing about that 47.1 is I got out of the water, I spoke to my coach. Coaches always play things down, but he was like, I give that probably an 8 out of 10. He's like, there's a few things that executed better. And I was like, whoa, it felt pretty damn good to me. And he's like, 8 out of 10. So that was, and off the back of that, I think, you know what that did? It masked a lot of those external things that were going on, those external pressures. Had I had a swim not as fast at that trials, it probably would have woken us all up a little bit to things probably aren't as optimal as they could be. But I swam that 47.1, and it was like everyone around me, everyone went, we told you so. Like, this is the guy. Swimming Australia's like, yeah, you know, we've backed the right horse. All my sponsors are like, yep, this is the guy. And for me, you know, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, I believe that too. I was like, yep, you know, I really believed at that time. I honestly believed that I could go the rest of my career without ever getting beaten. And as a 20-year-old, you know, it's pretty naive, it's pretty ignorant, but it's part of what made me a really good racer. Even in the twilight of my career, there was races that I look back on and I was like, I was never going to win that race. But if you asked me before I walked out behind the blocks, I'm sure I could convince you that I was going to win that race. So that was kind of the landscape at the time. Everyone started like beating their chest and going, yeah, this is our guy. And I believed it. The crazy thing about that time, and I guess as we talk about the lead into the London Olympics, so I raced the World Championships in July, August. I think the London Olympics were in about August. Again, I didn't do one international race in that whole time. I didn't race one of my competitors that I was going to be racing at the Olympics in that entire 12 months. And beyond that, between the Australian Olympic trials in April and the Olympic Games in August, I didn't even race once. I did not do one race. And the thinking from the people in Australia, my coaching staff and the Australian swim team staff was, let's shelter him away from everybody else. Let's train him up. And so they won't know what hits them when we release him on the world stage. Of course, everyone already knew where I was at. Everyone knew I was swimming fast. Everyone knew I was the guy to beat. So it didn't really come as much of a surprise tactic for anyone else. But in my reflections on London and what went wrong, or why I didn't swim my best time in London, I see that as the glaring issue, that I had no race practice in essentially 12 months. I mean, I raced at our Olympic trials, but no one really challenged me there. And so for 12 months, every race I did, I led from the first 5 meters to the last. And I never once had my race plan challenged. I never once had my thought process challenged. I never once had my confidence challenged. The first time that happened was at the Olympic Games.
That's something that we take for granted in the United States, is that, there's the population's so big. There's always talent. Everyone's always being challenged. They don't have to travel too far. And yeah, that's very insightful. I forgot that, it was that 47.1 was mind blowing for everyone. And so it sounds like between that 47.1, also in the Olympic Games, you, on top of not being, sharpening your knife, you also had all the celebrity promotion happening.
Yeah, and which in hindsight, right? So Australia was getting crazy. In hindsight, the perfect thing to do there is, let's base ourselves out of America. Let's base ourselves out of Europe. Let's go and race the Americans or the Europeans. Let's take away all the fanfare and let's get on the blocks next to those guys that you're going to be racing in a couple of months' time. We did the opposite. We sat smack bang in the middle of all the fanfare and celebrity, and we shied away from racing any of those international competitors. So, hindsight's a great thing. And my whole coaching staff, nobody in and around my team had ever been to an Olympic Games or coached an Olympic Games or experienced an Olympic Games. So, we probably needed some outside help there. But when you're swimming 47.1, help isn't something that you really go looking for.
That's a good point.
Really good point. Take us to that first relay, because everybody that, this is a very swim nerd, chlorinated audience you're talking to. Everyone knows what it's like to rest, to shave, to taper, have your first swim, and the board doesn't show what it should show. And that was a whoa moment. That was like, because everyone's like, hey, is Maggie on or not?
Yeah.
That first relay.
I think so we did a training camp in Manchester leading into London for about 2 weeks, and I was tapering off. It was probably like, for me back then, I'd have around a 4-week taper leading into racing. It's pretty long, but that was what I liked. And I was out of form. I wasn't swimming fast in training. My training times weren't coming easy. My stroke rates were a little off. The feel of the water wasn't right. And then I wasn't sleeping well. Things started feeling really off. And I just kept coming back to, you're at 47.1, you've got a gap. You've got a gap to the rest of the world. I think at that stage, the next person might have been like 47.8 or something. So I'm thinking, like, I've got this buffer. If these guys are going 47.8, I'm going 47.1. I can be a little off my game and still be okay. So I'm telling myself, you're all right, you're all right. My coach is telling me you're all right. But I'm not swimming well. And then we get into the Olympic Village, and that is like a world in its own. The beds are 6 foot long. I'm 6'5". The food's different. You're walking kilometers a day to get to buses, to get to pools, to get to different venues and stuff. And I was like, wow, like everything was just like blowing my mind. And the whole time I'm just coming back to, all you've got to do is swim that 47.1 again. All you got to do is swim that 47.1. So I keep reassuring myself, Anyway, that gets to the relay, and the guys, so the whole time leading into the Olympics, I said to my coach, I don't want to swim the heat in the relay. I didn't swim the heat at the World Champs the year before, and I smoked it in the final. Let's just back that in again. And people are starting to say, oh, he's not looking that good in training. He needs that hit out in the morning. He needs that hit out. So I swim in the morning. We're next to America. We go in behind, like a body length behind America in the heat. And Jason Lezak is anchoring for America. And I just had this thought in my head, we have to be in lane 4 for the final tonight if we're going to win. So I empty the tank in the morning. I beat Jason Lezak. I get us on the wall. I think I split like 47.5 or 47.6, something like that. I'm thinking in my head, I've just split 46.5. Like I'm hooking right now. I'm going really hard. The coach gives me the splits. I've split 47.5. I've absolutely emptied the tank. So I'm like, well, I need to have a really big rest today before this final tonight. Go back to the village. Again, the craziness, can't sleep. Come back that night. They start talking to our relay team. They're like, if we're going to win this relay, we need James to break the world record in that first leg. Like that's our thing, right? I'd swum 47.4 the year before, and we'd won the relay just. This year, the other teams have gone a bit faster. Australia's team, like maybe not so much. So if we're going to win this relay, they need a world record split from me in the first leg. So suddenly I'm walking out there for this relay swim. I'm swimming my first final at Olympic Games. I want to do my best swim. I want to help the relay out. But I've literally been told the way we win this relay is for you to break the world record in the lead-off leg. So all I'm thinking about with going out to swim this race is I have to break the world record in this race, which is such an unhealthy mindset when you're trying to think about a process and execute a race plan. And that race was, I honestly can't remember the race as such and what went wrong, what went right, how the technique was, anything like that. I just know I swam 48 seconds. I think 48.1 or 48.2, somewhere around there. And I touched the wall and looked up at the time, and I was just like, what on earth just happened? Like, what was that? Like, I didn't even have time to process it. And then we walk off pool deck, and the Australian media has a big presence in the media zone because swimming's our number one sport. And the Australian media goes feral, absolutely feral. You've let down Australia. We needed you on that. That was one of our only 2 gold medal chances. How are you ever going to win the individual? I literally had a journalist ask me, what does it feel like to have just let down your country? And straight out of the pool. So I was like, oh my God. And I just like went into a shell. I went back to the Olympic Village. I was sitting there with my coach trying to like talk about what went wrong. All I could think about was all these people that I'd let down back in Australia. And it just, that relay swim in particular really crushed me because I felt like I let down the other 3 guys in my team. I felt like I let down the whole country. And suddenly I'd gone into the meet as a 47.1 swimmer. I'd come out of that race as a 48.1 swimmer. And things were just in turmoil.
You were 48.03. Yeah, way off the 47.1. I think everybody has that first swim after a big taper, and you're like, this is where because that first swim tells you where you're at. But after that race, I don't know how many people had a reporter tell them, hey, you've let your entire country down.
Yeah.
That's awful. That's awful. Here's the thing. So your individual with this framing feels really like a Herculean performance because, you got a lot of chest hair if you're going to go 47.5. Yeah. But it sounds like your brain was scrambled heading into the race. How did you get your head together for that race?
Yeah, so most people would be surprised by this, but I'm actually quite proud of that 47.5. It was one of the better swims I put together, I believe, in my career. Not necessarily physically. I've swum better races. I've swum faster. I've had better technique. But mentally, to get up on those blocks and you know, in any other Olympics in history, do enough to get a gold medal. I was really proud of myself. It was a tough 4 or 5 days. The social media, like I said, was very new at the time. I think I mentioned in the last podcast. So I was getting a stream of messages through social media telling me how useless I was, telling me how I'd let people down. And, you know, didn't have the tools back then to switch off those notifications and to kind of filter through that and to not listen to that stuff. So I was just getting a barrage of negativity all week leading into the final of this 100 freestyle. So the heats still didn't feel great, got through it. The semis started to feel a little bit better and qualified fastest for the final. And there was just like this glimmering hope, like maybe we can still get this done. Like, and the crazy thing was, you know, I was still going into that final with the intention of winning, but I wasn't sure if I could win. And that's insane. That's like, it's crazy to think that was my thought. And I remember I went to the change rooms before the race and I was putting my suit on and I looked in the mirror and my eyes were bloodshot. My face was pale. I didn't have the air of confidence or arrogance that I always carried myself with. And that scared the shit out of me right before I walked out on pool deck. And then I speak to young kids about this all the time now in post-career, and it's really is the truth. I've never won a race in my career that I didn't believe I could win. And I went into that race without a firm belief that I was going to win. And to this day, I believe that's why I lost, regardless of how the race panned out, regardless of, you know, how close it was, regardless of the fact that Nathan swam the race of his life. For me, that's the reason I lost that race. And it was that moment when I looked in the mirror, I saw my bloodshot eyes, I saw fear that I lost things. And I made a concerted effort from that point in my career onwards to change that.
So we're down to 6 minutes. Dang it. But so a great follow-up so you made a concerted effort to change it. Take us to 2013.
Yeah, so 2013. So after London, I'm like, I'm getting back. I'm going to assert my dominance as the best freestyler in the world. I think I swam a stretch of like 47 points in one season or something. This time the World Championships is coming up and I've learnt my lesson. We go to Europe and we race all the way up until the World Championships. I race at the French Open. I race at like these European meets, winning everything, swimming 47s. Get to the World Championships. Again, I'm the one to beat. So again, there's a lot of pressure. Again, the Australian media are saying, is he a one-hit wonder? Is he not? Heap of pressure. And it gets to that freestyle final. And that, in my opinion, that is one of the best 100 freestyle races that I've seen or been a part of. So Vladimir Morozov goes out 21.9 in the first 50 meters of the 100 free at a World Championships. And I was in lane 6. So I'd had a good heat and a really poor semi-final. I'd missed the turn in the semi-final. My stroke was a bit off. But this time I've got the bravado back. I've been in Europe. I've been racing. I've been winning. Bad semi-final, you know what? I'm still doing my thing. So we're swimming in the final. I think I've got Nathan Adrian and Jimmy Fagan inside me. Vladimir Morozov is out in lane 1 or 2. Swimming into the turn. I turn, and as I turn, I see underwater a swimmer on the way back the second 50 at the 5 meter mark. And that's the first time I've ever really been thrown off in a race by competitors. I remember just thinking like, something must be wrong. Like that's not right. Who is that? I couldn't think in my head who was out in lane 1. And it kind of confused me a little bit. But because I'd been doing that racing and because I'd kind of nailed down that confidence again, I stuck to my race plan. I had a huge amount of wash in that second 50 meters because everyone had gone out really fast. So I think I turned maybe 6th or 7th in that race, way back off the lead group. And so I hit a huge amount of wash on that second 50. And the second 50 felt like one of the hardest I'd ever done because I was in like a washing machine and I wasn't really used to being that far behind. Anyway, I'm breathing to the same side as Morozov. And as we get to the 25 meters to go, he's still like, I can just see his feet. Like he's still so far ahead. And so I kind of just started ripping into that last 25. Nathan Adrian and Jimmy Fagan were still both ahead of me as well. The last probably 10 meters, I closed my eyes in that race. So I never used to close my eyes. And I was in so much pain in the back end of this race. And I'd just come off losing the Olympic Games. I was like, I've got to dig deep here and get to a space I haven't to before. So I closed my eyes. I went hypoxic. I knew my stroke count to the wall. And I just ripped and teared that last 10 meters. And I think the first point in the whole race where I took the lead was with about 2 meters to go. And I got that win. And for me, that was probably the most gratifying win of my career, because I had all these people questioning me. I had those memories of the year before. And for me, I was like, yep, I've now shown the world that, I am a premier sprinter. It wasn't a fluke the first time, and I belong here on the world stage. So that was a really exciting moment for me.
I think that we need a part 3.
We need a part 3.
I think we need to. Would you come back for number 3? Would you come back for another one?
Yeah. Do you remember that race when Morozov went out 21.9?
Oh yeah, dude, we're nerds. We live in stuff. It's like going to church.
I'm surprised nobody's done it since though, right? Like no one's ever really thrown it out there like that again. Him breathing 2s to go 21.9 feet on, it is insane speed.
Dude, I mean that dude can do some crazy stuff. I feel he's absolutely. But all right, it's been decided we're getting a part 3 because we made it through we chipped away. We made it through another 2 years of your career. But thank you as always, James. It's so fun hearing your stories and your brutal honesty. It's great talking to you.
Until next time.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.